Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
The book of Revelation, we know by two names. We often call it the book of Revelation, which comes from the Latin word for it, or the book of Apocalypse, which comes from the Greek word. Both words mean unveiling.
You trying to tell us that this isn't your favorite book?
Oh, I love this book. Fascinating book.
You really do?
Yeah, I do. Because, why? Because the book of Revelation is so misquoted and misunderstood, and because it was the book of Revelation that caused me to lose sleep back when I was back in the 8th grade and first read these words. My mother taught me this education, so when I heard from her about this book of Revelation and these monsters and beasts and everything, I had to read it for myself, and when I read those words, it scared me to death. I could not sleep that night. Thinking of the beast that was going to rise up out of the water, and the beast that was going to be coming out of the land, and the dragon, and these were ideas that messed with my young imagination.
And last week he told us to read it before he got here. I couldn't, it was really hard to understand.
It's deep and it's symbolic.
Yeah.
10 shots of tequila would have got you there.
Let's think of the word revelation. Revelation and apocalypse. They both come from the same root, which means to unveil. I love using the image because back in that age, do you know where the tradition of the wedding veil comes from? Any of the young ladies in the room, when you were married, did you have a wedding veil? Where does that whole image come from? You come in with the veil over your face, and then what happens? Dad lifts the veil. It's in that lovely tradition. The ancient tradition was that your parents arranged the marriage. You had no idea who you were marrying. And that day they brought you the bride, and they unveiled. And that was the young groom's moment to say yippee or no. To reveal then was to pull back the veil, was to lift the veil and to see. There you go.
No todas. Todas vamos
Not
bellas.
everyone.
Both ways.
And that's what the book of Revelation is all about. The book of Revelation is about the word veil or curtain we often use for veil today too, right? The temple had a veil or a curtain. Sort of like pulling back the curtain and seeing what's behind the curtain. That's what the book of Revelation is all about. Because it was believed that it was sort of like John had this opportunity of looking behind the curtain and seeing what was there. And for centuries we've misinterpreted this book to be this glimpse of John looking behind the curtain and seeing what would happen at the end of the world. When the world ends, what's it going to be like? And people would look at this book of Revelation as revealing, unveiling what the end of the world is going to be like. We ready to step into it?
All of the apostles believed it was going to be happening sometime soon, right?
So they did have a very apocalyptic, the words we've used words like Perusia, right? How it is that Christ is going to come again. Christ is dead, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. St. Paul believed that Christ was going to come again. Other words that we used were eschaton or eschatology, right? The eschaton is the end times when Christ comes again. We believe that when Christ came again, that was going to usher in the end times. The apocalypse, that fits within all of this. Why? Because back in that time, as you so rightly point out, they believed that when Christ comes again in the Perusia, it's going to welcome the end time. So the question becomes, what's it going to be like? It's almost like the reverse of our creation stories. Why did we write our creation stories, the book of Genesis? To tell us where we came from. When we were sitting around the campfire at night, and Andy, being the great storyteller that he is, the fish keeps growing every day, right? We naturally looked around at night around the campfire and asked, where did we come from? Well, you came from your parents. Well, where did they come from? Well, they came from their grandparents. Okay, keep tracing that back. What was the story? Where did we all come from? And the story that Andy told us made sense. That in the beginning, God created the world. And when God created the world, God created the first man and the first woman, and we all come from that. Andy told us where we came from. Now we have John telling us what's going to happen in the end of time. The question becomes, is John really telling us about the end of time, or is John telling us about something that already happened? You follow me? In the Gospels of the first Gospel, Synoptic Gospels, when Jesus says, destroy this temple, is he talking about something that's going to happen? Or is he talking about something that already happened? Jesus, okay, if he lived, say around 30 AD, he's saying these words, destroy this temple. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD. That temple was destroyed. It is no more. When they're later writing between, say, 70 and 85 AD, they knew that. So are they writing about something that's going to happen? Jesus saying, destroy this temple? Are they writing about something that happened, that's going to happen, or something that already happened? The same with John in the book of Revelation. Is John talking about something that's going to happen? Christians being devoured by beasts? Or is he talking about something that already happened? Christians being devoured by a beast whose name was Nero, who was persecuting us. So the book of Revelation raises the question for us. Is John talking about something that's going to happen, or really something that already has happened?
Was that the last time the temple was destroyed? 70 AD?
That was the last time that I'm aware of. I don't believe it was ever rebuilt after 70 AD. The west wall, the Wailing Wall that stands today, was part of this temple that was destroyed. It was destroyed previously when we were taken into captivity, but then what happened when we came back? We rebuilt it. Destroyed again by the Romans in 70. So, Revelation is, where do we find Revelation in our Bible? Is Revelation near the front? Revelation's actually the last book of the Bible. The last book of the Bible, does that mean that it was written last? No. The books of the Bible are not in order by how they were written. In the New Testament, the first part of the New Testament to be written again was the first letter to the Thessalonians, and then Paul's letters, and then the Gospels. The book of Revelation comes later, but it's actually the second letter of Peter that was the last letter. So when you're playing Trivial Pursuit and the question is, what was the last book of the Bible to be written? Last book was second letter of Peter. Revelation is popular for the wrong reasons. This book is popular for the wrong reasons. Think about that for a moment. Because many people think it's a literal guide on how the world will end. The question becomes, how should we interpret the book of Revelations? Should we interpret it literally? That everything that's said there will literally happen? That a beast will literally come out of the ocean? Or do we understand them in some other ways as symbol? Do we understand them symbolically? So that when it's talking about 7 lampstands, those 7 lampstands stand for something else. That beast with 10 horns or 7 heads, that it stands for something else. The beast, for instance, we're going to read about this beast having the number 666 on its forehead. Have you heard about that image before? The beast, the sign of the beast, the mark of the beast, 666, that number. Oh, people love trying to guess what these things are. Well, maybe that beast was Stalin or Hitler or the Pope. You'll always hear that, right? If you Google, go onto YouTube or Google anything, right? There are all sorts of people who call the Pope the Antichrist or the beast or whatever. There are all sorts of people who do that. The events in the book have been related to multiple events from the communist revolution. Oh, the book of Revelation is really talking about the communist revolution. Or about the atomic bomb being dropped. Or about the creation of Israel. Or the Gulf War. Got news for you. John, all those years ago, didn't know anything about the Gulf War. He wasn't writing about the Gulf War. Sorry. Don't mean to disappoint you. People have used the book to try to calculate the exact date of the end of the world. Because if it talks about something happening for so many days, and then 1,000 years of Satan being bound up, and then Satan being released, well, it seems that we could just count all of that and add it together, and we'll know when the world's going to end, right? Careful, that would be dangerous. So let's take a step backward and talk about some basic information about the book of Revelation. Things like, when was it written? remember that the Gospel of John was written roughly between 190 and 100 AD. So about the time that the Gospel of John was written, this book of Revelation was written as well. We think somewhere between 91 and 96 AD. At the end of Domitian's reign, who was Domitian? He was the emperor. Who was his predecessor? Nero. Have we heard stories of Nero? Nero is the one who had fun killing Christians, tying us to posts, purportedly playing the violin as he watched the city of Rome burn, and lighting up the streets. What he would do, did you ever notice how expensive oil is? Maybe not these days, but before, when oil was more expensive, Nero decided, why should I use oil to light the lamps of my streets? Why not just take the Christians, pull them in, tie them to posts and light them up and let them light up the city? So much cheaper than oil. So Nero was killing and persecuting Christians, and the persecution continued under Domitian's reign. Who is John writing to? Was he writing to you and to me, to us, today in the 21st century? Sorry to disappoint you. John didn't write his book for us. We might interpret it that way, but John was writing to the churches in Western Asia Minor. Today, what's the country? Turkey. Modern-day Turkey. The traditional author, we believe that Revelation was written by a man named John, because in the book it says, I, John. So probably a Jewish Christian prophet, sometimes identified with the apostle and or the writer of the other epistles. Essentially, that's why we talk about the Johannine school. There's this group of people who are writing books, and they were all writing books in the name of John. This is another one of those books, which is why this course is called Johannine literature. It's one of those books that was written by, or claimed to be written by, a person named John.